listener production.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelenskyy. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
What concerns do you have about Vice President Harris's ability to beat Donald Trump if she were at the top of the ticket?
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
Hey, I'm Bension Siebert, and that was US President Joe Biden a short time ago as we record this, making what some believe may be his final fatal mistakes as he fights to continue as Democratic candidate for the presidential election in November. Since his disastrous performance at the debate against Donald Trump 2 weeks ago, the only story dominating US politics has been, will 81-year-old Joe Biden withdraw from the race? Biden has been adamant he's the best person to beat Donald Trump. But in the past 48 hours, Hollywood royalty and major Democratic donor George Clooney came out in the New York Times saying Biden should withdraw, on top of a steadily growing list of Democratic lawmakers. US media is even reporting that some of Biden's inner circle of advisors is coming up with a plan to convince him to go. So are these gaffes today, in the space of just a few hours, the final straw? Matt Bevan is an ABC journalist and host of America If You're Listening. Matt, is this the end for Joe Biden?
Well, it might be, but not immediately. I don't think his performance was so bad in this press conference that he's going to walk off stage and go, actually, yeah, probably best that I don't continue as the candidate. I think he probably thinks that he did a pretty good job. I mean, he answered a number of really complex foreign policy questions in a detailed way, which, you know, is his marker of his own marker of him doing the job well. And his argument is that he's the best person to be the president and he's the best person to campaign against Donald Trump. Those are his two arguments. And one of those two things may be true, but the concern from Democrats is that he's not the best person to campaign against Donald Trump. But if he doesn't change his mind, he'll be the candidate in November. There's no question about that.
So let's start dissecting what happened at this press conference. This is what Joe Biden says in response to the questions about his fit for office.
I think I'm the best qualified person to do the job.
Why do you think that he says he's the best person to do the job despite all of this?
Well, what job is he talking about? Is the job being the president? Because he is highly qualified to be the president. He's, been the president for 4 years, and he has an extremely long and at times illustrious history of being involved in executive government and being involved in foreign policy and being involved in big policy decisions and working with Congress. And those are all the things that a president does in their job. But a separate job is campaigning for president. Now that he is running for re-election, he's taking on a second job where he is a candidate. And that's the thing that most people are concerned about. And he didn't really explain why he is better than some of the other options, like his Vice President Kamala Harris, at defeating Donald Trump, apart from the fact that he's done it before. But at this stage in the 2020 election, he was doing much better in polls. So how exactly he backs up that statement that he's the best person for the job, I'm not quite sure. And in the press conference, he didn't make a particularly strong argument for it.
So I do think that he gave a bit of a clue about why he thinks that he's better than specifically his Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's have a listen to what he says about the US Senate.
My long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom on how to deal with the Congress, to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen.
Traditionally, one of the key jobs of the vice president is to be a bridge between the White House and Congress. And famously, Kamala Harris hasn't done a great job at that. Do you think that Joe Biden is right that she can't get stuff through the Congress?
I mean, Kamala Harris was also in the Senate for years, not nearly as long as Joe Biden, of course, but she hasn't really had the opportunity to be the point person, and if she was in fact the president, then maybe she would do things differently to the way that she's doing them at the moment. He's right, though, that he has passed a lot of legislation. That's true. But the key problem is that does the American voter go, oh, yes, all that legislation that Joe Biden has passed that's making my life appreciably better? I mean, probably not. I guess I don't know that he can really solidly claim that Kamala Harris would do a worse job at that than him.
Let's talk about another test that he says that he's passed. Here's what he says about taking neurological exams for his health.
If the neurologist tells me he thinks I need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. I hadn't hidden a thing. You ought to ask Trump for his, okay? I laid it all out. And every single day, I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it.
Is the problem here for Joe Biden that he can say anything about what his doctors say, but we're watching him make these regular gaffes, and it's kind of tragic to watch in a way?
Well, even that answer was just, you have to sort of lean in and listen. I guess the thing is, Joe Biden is saying, I don't have any diagnosed neurological condition. And I think the American voter would say that you're 81. That's the issue. The condition that you have is being 81. And you are a spry fellow for 81, There's no indication that Joe Biden is, on death's door. He would probably survive, or, he would, based on his current health levels, would probably survive another 4 years in office. But it's the hardest and most difficult job in the world, and he's doing it at an age that no one has ever attempted to do it before. And people are going, well, maybe 81 is just too old to be the president. And he doesn't really have a strong argument against that. And additionally, if Kamala Harris was to be elected as the president, there's nothing stopping Joe Biden from continuing to do a lot of the things that he's currently doing, be part of her administration, assist her in terms of dealing with Congress and traveling around the world, dealing with Ukraine, being a special envoy, he could be the ambassador to the UN. He could do any number of jobs. He could be her Secretary of State. There's no reason why he couldn't do a whole bunch of jobs that would mean that he still had a huge contribution to the success of the administration. But the issue is that none of that is relevant if the Democrats lose the election in November and Donald Trump is the president again.
Finally, let's talk about the ability that he might have, or he might not have, to defeat Donald Trump. This is what he said at his press conference.
Earlier, you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
Can Joe Biden now turn the attention to Donald Trump?
No. And that is the key problem. Donald Trump doesn't have another court appearance until September at the moment. And Donald Trump could play golf every day between now and then, and his campaign would probably improve. Because at the moment, all of the attention is on whether or not Joe Biden can be the president. And that's a big, big problem for Joe Biden. I mean, basically, Donald Trump's barely been seen since that debate because he knows that at the moment, being seen is not what he needs to do. So that's why, we keep seeing all these clips of him making little remarks about Kamala Harris or Joe Biden from the back of his golf cart, because at the moment, his instinct is to just get out of the way and watch the other side's campaign implode. The interesting thing is, though, the polling hasn't really moved since that debate. And so Joe Biden, it has moved a little bit. But the thing is that, US presidential election polls have a margin of error of 3%, and it's moved less than 3%. And Joe Biden may still win, is the thing. And I don't know that I could categorically say that from the current situation, Joe Biden can't win. And while that is the case, Joe Biden is potentially going to try and remain as the nominee. He's going to cling on to that job while ever there's a chance of him winning, or until someone convinces him that maybe someone else would have a demonstrably better chance at winning. Kamala Harris, maybe at the moment in the polls, does 2 points better than Joe Biden, which is less than the margin of error. So it's hard to make a statistical argument against Joe Biden at the moment. It's a vibes-based argument that a lot of these people are making, and Joe Biden is not a man who is keen to leave the presidency based on bad vibes.
Well, the vibes are definitely off, but we'll be watching this. Yeah. We'll be watching this with great interest. Matt Bevan, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Cheers, Bension.
Matt Bevan there. That's it for The Briefing today. We're keeping a very close eye on what happens next with the US president. So keep checking your feed for analysis over the weekend if big news does happen. And that's not all we have for you. Tomorrow, Antoinette sits down with former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull. It's a fascinating chat on the state of democracy in the world and what Turnbull thinks of world leaders, including Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu, and the debate raging about whether Joe Biden is fit to continue as US president.
The reality is his biggest political problem, vulnerability, is his age and the perception that he is not up to doing the job.
That'll be in your feed tomorrow, and we'll upload the interview in full to YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom and hit that subscribe button as a treat. Happy Friday, and thanks for listening. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you soon.